So hello and welcome to this Developer Direct recording. This is a quick demo session looking at Visual LiveBindings. If you'd like to join us for our live Developer Direct sessions, then please follow us at EMBTDD on Twitter and join in the chat at #EMBTDD. So in this quick video, we're going to have a look at three types of demo. The first will be very much just getting started with Visual LiveBindings, followed by a couple of more interesting demos connecting into data and also connecting into objects as well. So enough slides, let's just get to it. So let's start here with our first Visual LiveBindings application. We're going to create a VCL Forms application. Visual LiveBindings is available for the VCL and also for FireMonkey within RAD Studio for both Delphi and C++. So we're going to start off with an edit control. Let's add in a checkbox and also a label. And I'm just going to lay these out on the screen so we can see each element. So I'm going to right click and bind visually. And with the three controls here, we can see we have three nodes within the LiveBindings Designer. And as I select a control on the screen, it highlights it in the LiveBindings Designer and vice versa. So let's get the text property, the edit, updating the caption on the label. Very easily done, just drag and drop. And you can see we now get a Visual LiveBinding association here. And also our binding list is populated with a link control to property binding, and this binds the edit 1 to the label 1 caption. Perfect. So let's also, I want to use the checkbox here to update the enabled property of the edit. Now the enabled property is not visible straight away, so let's just drag the checked property onto these dots here, and that's going to pop up the bindable members, and we can come in here and we can find the enabled property and select OK, and that now gives us the enabled property visible and the check property associated to it. So let's go ahead and run this application, and if we type in here hello world, and as we leave the control, it's validating the values and populating them through to the bindable members that it has associated through. Now also, if we update the checked property, it's going to affect the enabled property of edit 1. We can see here we can now no longer edit the box, whereas if we check back in, we can. So that's very simply LiveBindings in action. And what's really great with this very complex application, if we just let's lay these out, we can see we get a nice printable layout. We can now save this to an image and put that into the one thing that we all do religiously called documentation. Okay, so let's get on to LiveBindings example 2. And for this, I'm going to use a FireMonkey application. So let's just go File, New, and let's do a FireMonkey desktop application. And here we're going to add in a client dataset. And T-client dataset is an in-memory dataset. I'm just going to load some XML data into this. Now we have a number of fields in here, and there's a few things that we can do very quickly to get a user interface ready. The first off, we can actually just say let's link to a new control. Let's choose a T-grid, and we now have our new grid control populated through with the different types of images, memo fields, strings, integers, float values and so on, all populated through correctly. And if we go ahead and let's add, well, if we right click here, we can see we've now got this bind source DB up here. We can add a navigator that is using that bind source to navigate through, and the bind source is what allows us to link to the data set. So let's go and run this. Oh, I still have project 4 open. Let's go and close that. Let's try again. There we are. We can see now we have navigatable data that's controlled through here. So let's do something a little bit more interesting. I'm going to get rid of the grid for the moment. I want to leave our navigation bind source there, that's fine. But let's associate in some additional controls. Now I could go ahead here and let's add an edit onto the form, and using the edit one text, just drag and drop it across, and we can see now we have triggerfish in there, and we can navigate through the different records. Okay, but we've got a T-edit, it's called edit one. Let's do something a little bit more interesting. Let's actually right click here and link to a new control. And this is going to bring up our bind to new control options. And I want to bind to a T-edit. I want to add a control label. And if I say OK, we can now see that we've got edit category that is a T-edit. So it's named it according to the field here, which is very useful. And it's also put a label onto the control for me with the display name of the dataset field, which is brilliant. I actually now have a very usable user interface rather than one that requires additional work. Now also, this brings up the label, and we don't really want to use the label here. So what we can do is we can come under the property here for LiveBindings Designer, and we can make this invisible. Let's add another one in here. So because we've just used T-edit, we can link to the new T-edit control very quickly. And instead of going into here and disabling it, we can just right click on the control itself and hide the element, and that hides it out the way. So let's add another one in here and add another one, and with the notes let's go and add this to a new control. We'll have a T memo, and so we don't need to have a control label in here. And let's just rearrange these slightly so it's a little bit more user friendly. Let's add in here a checkbox. So this checkbox I'm going to use to control the word wrap. So word wrap. And I can see here this is the checkbox, and there's the memo. So if we just drag this from here down to the bindable members again, we can just go find word wrap property, and let's just hide a couple of these labels that have popped up. Okay, now lastly add an image in, so we can again just link to a new control, T image control, and let's make that a little bit bigger. I'm just going to hide this for a moment, so let's lay these out a little bit. Let's bring that down here. Okay, so we now have a very crude but ready to use Fishfax implementation. So if we go ahead and run, we can navigate through our data, we can control the word wrap on the screen for the control, and also if we come in here we can angel fish blue and leave the control as we navigate back and forth. That's persisting through. Now also what's very nice here is we don't need to worry about having to code specific events to manage the data input. So if I start trying to type in some letters into this number field, I can't type anything in, but if I type in numbers, it allows me. So we can see there's some really smart intelligence that LiveBindings is able to pick up and work with the runtime type information about the types that are being displayed into the controls, and helping make the user input a lot smoother along the way, which is great. Okay, that's a few basic controls. Let's have a look at one that I made a little bit earlier. And let's go here to my Visual LiveBindings. Now, here I've got a prototype bind source that we're going to talk a little bit about in a moment. Now, a prototype bind source allows us, if we bind visually here, to create fields that we're able to work with and give us design time data to view. So if we if we double click here, we can see here we can add additional fields in, and there's a set of generators here that give us design time values that we can work with, and we can have these values shuffled, we can have them repeated, but the bitmap image here with number 28 in it has a bitmap name string field that can work with it, and there's also colors which has the integer value for that color and so on. We also have some lorem ipsum text and some strings, and you can see here it's picking up number 28 and so on. So the generators work in association with each other to give us something that we can help design up and see what form looks like at design time. Now bear that in mind, because we'll come back and we'll do a quick Visual LiveBindings demo in a moment. But here I just wanted to show you, having this string value in our prototype bind source, we're able to link that to the edit output here, and we're able to use edit 1 to update the value of the prototype bind source. We could set this to be two-way. The direction here allows us to link the control to the data or have it bi-directional, but I've on purpose got this as a one-way binding here at the moment. And then on this checkbox we've got an on click event which is updating this binding's custom format to be that of the value of the text from the box. So what that allows us to see is that here, if we put in hello LiveBindings, we can see that's what comes through here, which is great. Now also, because this is a one-way binding, this control should be read-only, right? So the Visual LiveBindings is actually making the control read-only. I've not actually updated any properties on that control. I can't actually type in there because it knows it's displaying a read-only output. So let's go ahead and put an expression in here to the custom format. So let's use lowercase and then the string value that's being passed through, and we can see that this is not updating the value that's stored in the prototype bind source, but it is manipulating that value that's stored for displaying it. And we can make it uppercase, and here's just one more example where we can put some text at the start of it and then show the value. So that's pretty cool. And we could go ahead and change this at runtime here, just hello to you plus hello LiveBindings. So very easy to go ahead and play with. So finally, I wanted to show you how you can take this prototype bind source, and we're going to look at two different examples here. Firstly, we've got an object here that's set up. We've got two fields in here. We've got a foo integer and a foo string, and that foo integer and foo string are set to point to these two and outputting down here. Now there's no code, so in terms of user input code, again here this is a string field, so I can type in what I want, whereas on the numbers I can't type in anything apart from numbers. So that's controlling that. Now we've just seen that, right? But we've not seen it running off an object. So here we've got a prototype bind source with a tObject bind source adapter, which is taking a tfoo object, and we can see here the tfoo object is defined, and it passes in the two startup values, and then if we have a look up here we can see our class tfoo. I've just been using these two here to then bind onto to show them on the screen. So that's linking an object using one line of code to our user input, and because the fields on the prototype bind source when we set up match the properties of the object, it's very easy for that to go and pick up and show runtime data, where at design time we're using the generators to see how it's going to look. So I did promise two demos on that. The final one we're going to have a quick look at is actually touches on some of the new Windows 8 stuff that's been done using RAD Studio from XE3 onwards. So we're going to create a FireMonkey Metropolis UI application here. We're going to do a grid Metropolis UI application, and let's just give ourselves a little bit more real estate here. what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to this application. If we have a quick look as it starts, we've got a blank default application here with some tiles in here that we can click on, and it shows kind of master detail type relationship. And if we swipe upwards, we get the close bar, and out we come. So this is very much the Windows Metro look and feel. So I'm going to add on to this a new other. We're going to create a data module. And into the data module, we're going to add a prototype bind source. And let's add some fields. I'm just going to grab some of the generator fields at the top here to save me having to do any work. And now I've got some fields. Obviously, I'd name them as I want to if I wanted to use specific fields for my object that I'm linking into. And you could still use the generators for those. For example, let's just say I want to have a bitmap field. I'm going to call it my bitmap because that's the name of the property. And we can see now we get my bitmap using that generator. So it's very possible to add fields in using your own naming conventions here. Let's just take out the other bitmap for the moment. So we've just got one in there. Okay, so I'm just going to go, let's go save all of this. I'm going to use the very good naming convention of Unit 4 and Grid View 3 and Detail View 3 and Project 4 because that's brilliant. I know exactly what that is when I come back later. Obviously, you would use real names. But let's go ahead now and use that unit. And we're going to use the Unit 4. And we'll do the same on the Detail View. Now what we see is we come back to the form, we now have in another colour showing that it's from another unit our data module 4 prototype bind source ready for us to work with. So let's take this list box and let's make the selected items text to be the colour name. Now what I'm going to do is just select the binding that's been created here, and I'm going to use the list item style to select a Metropolis UI application. And we can now see that this list box has got a few different properties appear. So let's check the icon and bind that to my bitmap. Let's take the sub item text and put that to the bitmap name. And let's take the long description. And I'll tell you what, let's go back to our unit here. Let's add in those lorem ipsum fields that we looked at earlier because they're going to be quite useful in just a moment. So on the long description, let's take the lorem ipsum, and brilliant, that's good. That's our start page for launching through. Let's go to our detail view, and if I select this item title, I can see it's highlighted here, and let's make that the colour name 1, and then underneath here the subtitle, let's make that the bitmap name 1, and then here obviously we've got an image which has got a bitmap property, so let's link that to my bitmap, and then the field here for the text, let's make our string field 1. We can see our nice lorem ipsum text populating through. Okay, so that's good. We've got our basic form now sorted through. One last thing we need to do is just on the list box here, as we select and change, let's just say if, and it's unit 4's data module 4, there we are, prototype bind source, the item index is greater than -1, then let's begin here, and let's say unit 4's data module 4 prototype bind source 1 dot item index equals, in fact that's list box 1 dot item index. That might be a bit more useful. Let's use code completion item index. Okay, so basically what we're saying here is that if the list box has a selected item, then set the item index of the prototype bind source to be the item index that we've selected. And then all we need to do is we need to do application. Let's get device form, and we're going to use the detail view form, and we're just going to show it. Brilliant. So let's go ahead and run this. And we should now be able to see, here's our form. If we choose 46, we can see we come through to number 46. We've got the text, everything follows through. Let's choose number 14, and so on. This is all great, apart from we've got a few too many items in the list here. I'd probably redesign this to allow for more items and push it wider to the right. So let's just go ahead and fix that. We can say, well, actually, I only want to have 5 items. So if we set a record count to 5, and let's rerun that, we can now see we've only got 5 randomly generated values within our prototype bind source to work with. And that enables us to control that list and the values given to us. So that brings to the end our Developer Direct Visual LiveBindings introduction. I hope you've enjoyed that, and we look forward to seeing you on the Developer Direct sessions very soon. As I say, please do follow us at EMBTDD on Twitter or #EMBTDD. Thanks, goodbye.